This video is to give you information about the 2021-2022 Reading Olympics. Let's get started. What is Reading Olympics? Basically, it's teams of 4th and 5th grade students who get together and read books from a list that's 25 books long. Spend time reading those books between now and March, and on competition night in March, you'll compete against other teams based on the books that you've read. Here are some photos from previous Reading Olympics years. You see there it says Reading Olympics 2019. We did have a Reading Olympics in 2020 and 21, but they were both virtual. So this is from the morning of the competition. You can see us having a lot of fun there, Mr. Ellis and I with the kids. We're signing our shirts. That's one of the best things about that day. So that's a lot of fun. And then the pictures you see in the bottom corners there are kids at the Reading Olympics competition. Now, these photos are a couple years old, and, Reading Olympics, this version of it is a couple years old. So if you had siblings or friends that have done Reading Olympics in the past, this year's Reading Olympics is going to be a very different experience. Let me tell you how. 3 big changes for Reading Olympics this year. Number 1, it's just Great Valley Elementary Schools. We've done the same thing for the past couple of years when we've had virtual Reading Olympics, but now that we are going to have another in-person Reading Olympics, it's still going to be just with Great Valley Elementary Schools. This year, students actually get to vote for the books that end up on the Reading Olympics list. In the past, it's been a list of 45 books, all chosen by adults. This list is going to be 25 books long, and students will be voting on the majority of those books. Instead of just a trivia night where you sit and answer trivia questions about the books you read, our Reading Olympics will have trivia, but there will also be puzzles and races and breakouts and maybe a Kahoot or something like that too. All different types of events. It's going to be a really fun event. If you are interested in joining our Reading Olympics team, here are the requirements. Number 1, please be on time for all of our meetings. We have 7 meetings total, 1 a month, from September through March. They take place from 8 o'clock to 8:35 in the library. Because it's a team event and you'll be working with your teammates, you have an obligation to read books from that list. You must read 5 of the books from that list by our January meeting and 10 books total, so an additional 5, by our March meeting, which will be on the day of Reading Olympics. So 10 books total. Of course, you can always read more. That's never a problem. We will use Microsoft Teams to communicate with our Reading Olympics teams. So make sure you are active on Microsoft Teams. Make sure you check that regularly. We will set you up on that team after you've registered. You have to complete check-ins about the books that you've read online, sort of an accountability piece. And we will give you all the information and directions that you need for that at our October meeting at Reading Olympics. You must consistently demonstrate appropriate behavior at school and team meetings. We want you to represent yourself, your family, and our school with pride. Finally, you got to be able to attend Reading Olympics. It's a team event, so your teammates are counting on you to be there. That will be on March 30th at 6 o'clock p.m. More details to follow later on. To join, parents, please go to the library website and find the Reading Olympics button on the home page. Second, before you click where it says click here, read the document that says important info. This is the document that I'm also emailing to all 4th and 5th grade parents, and your child may have brought home a paper copy if they have library with me today. Finally, click here if you think you're interested. There will be a digital form for you to fill out with all kinds of information related to Reading Olympics. Please take your time as you're going through that to make sure all information is as accurate as possible. Oh, and do that by September 24th. That's the due date. Interested in what books may end up on our Reading Olympics list? Let's do a little preview. We chose some genres and we tried to break up our list by those genres. So you can see them all here. Let's go through each genre and show you what your options for reading are. We started out with 5 librarian picks. These books are already on the list. So if you want to start reading, start with one of these 5. We've got Ms. Bixby's Last Day, a story about 3 kids who skip school to try and give their favorite teacher her best last day before she has to leave for the rest of the school year for cancer treatments. Amari and the Night Brothers is about a girl named Amari, and her brother mysteriously disappeared from his school of magic, where he was the top student. This is perfect for fans of Harry Potter. Sunny Side Up is a graphic novel, and Sunny has to stay with her grandparents in Florida for the summer, and she's not exactly sure why she can't stay home with her parents and her brother. Amal Unbound is a beautiful story that's just as beautiful as the artwork on that cover, about a Pakistani girl who is overheard speaking poorly about one of her village's powerful families. As punishment, she is forced to be a servant at his home, where she learns some dangerous secrets about him. And finally, The Floating Field is a nonfiction picture book. It's the true story of some Thai boys who actually built a floating soccer field. From here on out, the choices are all up to the students. You will vote for one book from each category, and that will help complete our Reading Olympics list. In Love, Sugar, Magic, a girl discovers that her family of bakers are brujas, or witches, who use some very special ingredients in their recipes. The Serpent's Secret is an action-packed story based on Hindu mythology, perfect for fans of Aru Shah and Rick Riordan. The Hero's Guide to Saving the Kingdom is a textbook on how to fail at basic hero stuffs. In our funny genre category, kids in Millionaires for the Month are challenged to spend $1 million in 1 month without telling their parents, and they find out quickly that it's not as easy as you might think. Yumi Chung is disappointed to spend her summer at math camp, but a case of mistaken identity gives her the opportunity to go to a stand-up comedy class with her favorite YouTuber. Marcus's dad forces him to join a school film class after schools so he could stay out of trouble. And although Marcus isn't into it as first, he eventually becomes excited at the idea of turning his own comic book character, Toothpick, into a real superhero movie. And yes, to answer your question, that is the Kevin Hart that wrote this book. It's just as funny as he is. In our realistic fiction genre, starting middle school is giving Rahul Kapoor anxiety, so his favorite person in the whole world, his grandfather, gives him some great advice. Find one thing you're really good at and become the best at it. And this book is all about Rahul's journey to do just that. In Fish in a Tree, Allie has been smart enough to fool a lot of people because every time she lands at a new school, she hides her inability to read by creating clever, disruptive distractions. However, her new teacher, Mr. Daniels, sees that this bright, creative kid is really underneath this troublemaker. And finally, in Other Words for Home, Jude never thought she'd be leaving her beloved older brother and her father behind, all the way across the ocean in Syria. When things in her hometown start becoming dangerous, Jude and her mother are sent to live in Cincinnati with relatives. The story is all about her adjusting to that new life in America. In our graphic novel category, we start off with Allergic, where Maggie is the odd person out at her school. Her parents are preoccupied with getting ready for a new baby. Her younger brothers are twins and always in their own world. Maggie loves animals, and she thinks getting a dog is going to be the answer to her problem, but she quickly finds out that she's allergic. She breaks out in hives and rashes. Anything with fur is not a good thing for her. In the Cardboard Kingdom, this is about a neighborhood of kids who transform ordinary boxes into colorful costumes and their ordinary block into a cardboard kingdom. It's a summer where 16 kids encounter knights and rogues and robots and monsters. Each chapter is focused on a different character, and each character story weaves in and out with other kids in the neighborhood. Really, really cool book. And finally, in Measuring Up, 12-year-old Cece has just moved from Taiwan to Seattle. The only thing she wants more than to fit in at her new school is to celebrate her grandma's 70th birthday. So she enters a cooking competition to try and win the grand prize so she can pay for her grandma's ticket. Moving on to our mystery genre. 12-year-old Teddy has murder on his hands and trouble on his tail. He believes that Henry the hippopotamus at the brand new Fun Jungle has been murdered. 3 Greystone siblings in The Strangers are shocked when they see a news report of 3 children who were kidnapped. And these kids shared the exact same first and middle name as the Greystones. They have the same birthday. They're all the same age. Who are these kids exactly? Before they could ask their mom about it, she takes off on a sudden work trip, and she leaves behind puzzling clues and codes and even a hidden room and a dangerous secret that will turn their world upside down. Finally, in Masterminds by Gordon Corman, Eli Frieden lives in the most perfect town in the world of Serenity, New Mexico, where every lawn is perfect, every house has a pool. Honesty and integrity are valued above anything else. And the 30 kids who live there with him never lie. One day he takes his bike to the edge of the city limits and something so crazy and so unexpected happens. It changes everything Eli thought that he knew about his town. Our sports genre starts with most valuable players. Hoops Machine, the exhibition basketball team, kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters, are visiting Rip and Red's 5th grade class for their graduation. But he and his friends need to finish their schoolwork, which includes a brand new standardized test. But when the students in room 208 decide to question the need to take this test, a mini opt-out movement gains momentum. And when the administration hears about it, Hoops Machine, middle school basketball tryouts, and walking at graduation are all in jeopardy. In Game Changer, 13-year-old Teddy Youngblood is in a coma. He is fighting for his life after an unspecified football injury at training camp. His family and friends come to his side to discuss the events that led up to this tragedy. This story is told in a lot of different ways. Dialogue between Teddy's families, text messages, newspaper articles, interview transcripts, an online forum, and even Teddy's inner thoughts. Game Changer explores the joys, thrills, and terrifying risks of America's most dangerous sport and most popular sport. In Booked by Kwame Alexander, 12-year-old Nick learns the power of words as he wrestles with his problems at home, stands up to a bully, and tries to impress the girl of his dreams. Helping him along are his best friend and sometimes teammate Cody, and the Mac, a rapping librarian who gives Nick inspiring books to read. I can do the book thing, the rapping thing not so much. In our animals category, we start with Song for a Whale. From fixing the class computer to repairing old radios, 12-year-old Iris is a tech genius, but because she's the only deaf person at her school, she often is treated like she's not very smart. She learns about a real whale named Blue 55 who is unable to speak to other whales. So Iris understands how this must feel, and she has an idea. She should invent a way to sing to him. But he's 3,000 miles away. How is she going to play her song for him? Hate That Cat. Jack is trying to save the fat black cat stuck in the tree at his bus stop, but the cat scratches him instead. So he hates that cat. At school, Miss Stretchberry begins teaching Jack poems, and as the year progresses, Jack gradually learns to love that cat and find new ways to express himself. In the world according to Humphrey, we find out that you can learn a lot by observing another species. And that's what Humphrey was told when he was first brought into room 26. And boy, is it true. Soon Humphrey learns to read, write, and even shoot rubber bands, but only in self-defense, of course. With lots of friends to help, adventures to enjoy, and a cage with a lock that doesn't lock, Humphrey's life is almost perfect. If only his teacher, Miss Brisbane, wasn't out to get him. In our sci-fi category, Sal is in the principal's office for the 3rd time in 3 days, and it's the very first week of school. Gabby's the student council president, the editor of the school paper, and she is there to support her friend Yasmini, who just picked a fight with Sal. Gabby is determined to prove that somehow Sal planted a raw chicken in Yasmini's locker, even though nobody saw him do it, and the bloody piece of chicken has since mysteriously disappeared. When Gabby learns that Sal is capable of conjuring things much bigger than just a chicken, including his dead mother, she takes it all in stride. Sal knows that she is someone he can work with. There's only one slight problem. All this manipulation of time and space could put the entire universe at risk. Bloom. The invasion of Earth begins, but not the way that you'd expect. It begins with rain. Rain that carries seeds. Seeds that sprout overnight everywhere. These new plants take over crops field, they twine up houses, and they burrow below streets. They bloom, and they release toxic pollens. They bloom and form Venus flytraps, like pods that swallow animals and people. They bloom everywhere, unstoppable. Or are they? 3 kids on a remote island seem to be immune to these toxic plants. Naya, Petra, and Seth, and they each have strange allergies. One is even allergic to water. And yet, they're not allergic or harmed by any of these plants. What's their secret? Finally, When You Reach Me by Rebecca Stead. Shortly after a fallout with her best friend, Miranda starts receiving mysterious notes, and she doesn't know what to do. The notes tell her that she must write a letter, a true story, and that she can't share her mission with anyone. It would be easy to ignore the strange messages, except whoever they're from seems to have a real uncanny ability to predict the future. In our historical fiction category, Ground Zero tells the story of two kids. One, Brandon, is living in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and he's visiting his dad on the 107th floor of the World Trade Center. And Reshmina is also living on September 11th, but 18 years later, in 2019. She's grown up in the shadow of war, but she dreams of peace and progress. When a battle erupts in her village, Reshmina stumbles upon a wounded American soldier named Taz. Should she help Taz and put herself and her family all at risk? This story is about two kids, one devastating day, and nothing will ever be the same. In the Night Diary, it's 1947, and India, newly independent of British rule, has been separated into two countries, Pakistan and India. The divide has created a lot of tension between Hindus and Muslims, and hundreds of thousands of people are killed crossing the borders. Nisha is half Muslim and half Hindu. She doesn't know where she belongs or what her country even is anymore. When her father decides it's too dangerous to stay in what is now Pakistan, Nisha and her family become refugees and embark out first by train and then on foot to reach their new home. Their journey is long and difficult and dangerous. Nisha lost her mother as a baby, and she can't imagine losing her homeland too. Finally, I survived the Japanese tsunami of 2011. Visiting his dad's hometown in Japan 4 months after his father's death would have been hard enough for Ben. But one morning, the pain turns to fear. First a massive earthquake, and then his uncle's house nearly topples. The ocean waters rise, and Ben's family is swept away and pulled apart by a terrible tsunami. Now Ben is alone, stranded in a strange country a million miles from home. Can he fight hard enough to survive one of the most epic disasters of all time? Our scary category. Corinne Lemaire claims that she is not afraid of anything, not scorpions or the boys who tease her, certainly not jumbies. Jumbies are just made-up tricksters, made up by their parents to frighten children. And one night Corinne chases an agouti all the way into a forest, and shining yellow eyes follow her to the edge of the trees. When Corinne spots a beautiful stranger at the market the very next day, she knows that something extraordinary is about to happen. When this same beauty named Severine turns up at Corinne's house, danger is in the air. Severine plans to claim the entire island for the Jumbies. Corinne must call on her courage and her friends and learn the use of ancient magic that she didn't know she had to stop Severine and save her island from the Jumbies. Coraline. Coraline Jones is bored. She doesn't know anyone in her new neighborhood, and her parents are too busy working from home to play with her. One day, Coraline discovers a door that at one point led to a brick wall, but now it leads to a perfect world, one where her parents give her constant attention and always fix her favorite foods. I mean, they have buttons for eyes, but that shouldn't be a big deal, right? Well, it turns out that Coraline's other mother wants her to stay with them forever, and so buttons into her eyes. So Coraline quickly escapes back to her home, only to discover that her real parents have been kidnapped by the other mother, and now Coraline must go back to rescue them. In Wait Till Helen Comes, Molly and her brother Michael have never liked their 7-year-old stepsister, Heather. Ever since their parents got married, she has made Molly and Michael's life miserable. The family moves to a country house with a cemetery in the backyard, and if that's not bad enough, Heather starts talking to a ghost named Helen. Heather starts talking to a ghost named Helen and warning Molly and Michael that Helen is coming for them. We'll close things out with our nonfiction category. We've got a science comic. It's a graphic novel all about robots and drones from the past, present, and what they might be in the future. We all know the Who Is series, so we've got Who Is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and a spinoff of that is the What Is series. Your other option there is What Is Nintendo. If you want to learn more about the books you'll be voting on, go to the Reading Olympics page on the KDM Library website. Check out book trailers, author interviews, and other things connected to those books. You will see that the first column says vote. You will vote on one book from each of these categories. That voting link will be live at our first meeting. I hope you've gotten all the information you need to make a decision about whether or not you want to join Reading Olympics this year. But if you have any questions, please contact me or Mr. Ellis using the emails you see on the screen. Remember, if you are going to join, sign up by September 24th. Our first meeting is not long after that.